If you were married to a United States citizen or a lawful permanent resident, and you are wondering how to bring your spouse to the United States permanently in 2026, or how to secure a green card for your partner without making costly mistakes, then this video is exactly what you need. Today, we are walking step by step through the entire marriage-based green card process, covering everything from eligibility and application forms to updated costs, timelines, interview requirements, and the biggest policy changes that are affecting families right now. This is one of the most important journeys a couple can take together, and understanding it clearly can save you months of delays, thousands of dollars, and unnecessary stress. Let's start with the basics. A marriage-based green card allows a foreign spouse of a U.S. citizen or green card holder to live and work permanently in the United States. It is not citizenship, but it is a major step toward becoming a U.S. citizen in the future. Now, one of the most important distinctions you need to understand right away is whether the sponsoring spouse is a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident. If your spouse is a U.S. citizen, your case moves much faster because spouses of citizens are considered immediate relatives, meaning there is no annual limit on visas. But if your spouse is a green card holder, your case falls under the F2A category, which has yearly limits and can significantly increase your waiting time. Now, let's talk about the two main paths you can take in 2026. The first path is called adjustment of status. This applies if your spouse is already inside the United States and entered legally on a visa, such as a student visa, work visa, or tourist visa. Adjustment of status allows your spouse to apply for a green card without leaving the country. The second path is consular processing, which applies if your spouse is living outside the United States. In that case, after petition approval, your spouse will attend an interview at a U.S. embassy or consulate and then enter the U.S. with an immigrant visa. For couples already living in the United States, adjustment of status is often the preferred route. The process begins with Form I-130, which establishes your marriage relationship. At the same time, if you are married to a U.S. citizen, you can file Form I-485, which is the actual green card application. This is called concurrent filing, and it can significantly speed up your case. Alongside these, many couples also file Form I-765 for a work permit and Form I-131 for travel permission, allowing the foreign spouse to work legally and travel while the application is pending. Now, here is one of the most important updates in 2026 that many people don't know. The medical examination, known as Form I-693, must now be submitted at the same time as your I-485 application. In previous years, you could submit it later, but that is no longer the case. This means you need to schedule your medical exam early with a USCIS-approved civil surgeon. Another key update is that COVID-19 vaccination is no longer required as of 2025, although other vaccinations are still mandatory. Let's talk about costs, because this is where many families get surprised. As of 2026, the total government filing fees for a marriage-based green card inside the United States can range from approximately $2,150 to over $3,000, depending on whether you include work and travel applications. But that is just the beginning. When you add medical exam costs, document translations, passport photos, mailing fees, and possible attorney fees, the total cost can realistically reach between $3,000 and $5,000 or more. One of the most common mistakes applicants make is submitting the wrong fee amount, which can result in immediate rejection, so always double-check current fees before filing. Next comes documentation, and this is one of the most critical parts of your application. You will need your marriage certificate, proof of termination of any previous marriages, birth certificates, passports, proof of legal entry, and most importantly, evidence that your marriage is real. USCIS is not just looking for paperwork, they are looking for proof of a genuine relationship. This includes joint bank accounts, shared leases, insurance policies, photos together, travel history, and even messages or communication records. Think of it as telling the story of your relationship through documents. In 2026, the government has increased scrutiny on applications, including deeper background checks and even reviewing social media activity. Consistency between your application and your real-life story is more important than ever. And perhaps the biggest change is the return of mandatory in-person interviews for almost all applicants. Both spouses must attend, and the officer may ask detailed questions about your relationship, daily life, finances, and future plans. In some cases, couples are interviewed separately to check for consistency. The key here is simple: be honest, be prepared, and review your application together beforehand. Now, let's talk about timelines. For couples where the sponsor is a U.S. citizen and the spouse is inside the United States, the process typically takes between 8 to 14 months. However, if your spouse is outside the U.S., consular processing may take around 14 to 18 months or longer, depending on embassy backlogs. If the sponsoring spouse is a green card holder, the timeline can extend to several years due to visa limits and backlogs. This is why many permanent residents choose to apply for U.S. citizenship first, which can dramatically speed up the process. There are also certain factors that can delay your case, including missing documents, requests for additional evidence, background checks, or previous immigration violations. Each delay can add several months, so preparing a complete and accurate application from the beginning is extremely important. After approval, there is one final detail you need to understand. If your marriage is less than 2 years old at the time of approval, you will receive a conditional green card valid for 2 years. Before it expires, you must file Form I-751 to remove conditions and prove that your marriage is still genuine. Missing this deadline can cause serious problems, so it is crucial to track it carefully. Once you receive a permanent green card, if you are married to a U.S. citizen, you may be eligible to apply for citizenship after just 3 years. To wrap this up, the marriage-based green card process in 2026 is still very achievable, but it requires careful planning, strong documentation, and attention to detail. Yes, the costs are higher. Yes, the interviews are stricter. But for couples in genuine relationships, this process remains one of the most reliable paths to building a life together in the United States.